Hi there, welcome to the God's Eye Production Podcast. Spring is in full swing here since the last time that we had conversations. So up in the mountains of Virginia, we fully leafed out. We've got lots of blooms going on, so we're definitely in full spring mode up here. So this week, I'd like to do a framework for AI. AI is not good, it's not bad, it's how you use it. A lot of people hear the word AI and they freak out because they think of some type of doomsday scenario or Terminator or maybe even a hologram if you follow Star Trek or any of those kind of things. And all that I'm talking about this week is just uses of AI, maybe things we need to be considerate of AI, so on and so forth. Since the last podcast, we've elected a new pope. Since the last podcast, there's been a person rise that a lot of people believe kind of points more towards end time prophecy. Adullah Hashem, you can look all that up, and the Pope as well. I'm not Catholic. I believe that there's one mediator between God and man, and that's Jesus Christ. So the reason I bring it up is because it's good to be aware of political circles and what's going on in the world. So with all that said, a lot of people are worried because we have a new pope. Supposedly it's the last pope, or the last pope was the last pope, and this pope is not a legitimate pope or whatever. And this podcast isn't about that. It's just kind of documenting and time-stamping that phenomena. Here at God's Eye Productions, we take the long view of things because we're about discipleship and how to walk out a relationship with Jesus. And that's kind of our focus. So that's what we're about here. So the reason I bring this stuff up is just kind of as a timestamp, and also how media can be deceptive. Am I saying that there is not a pope right now? No, I'm not saying that at all. Am I saying that this person, Adullah Hashem, is somebody that we need to worry about? Not saying it one way or another. Just being watchful, being mindful, having a spirit of discernment. And we've already covered that in a previous podcast. A spirit of discernment is going into the Bible, reading the Word, being able to learn for ourselves about what it says, but there's also a part of discernment that is being aware of what's going on around you in a spiritual sense. But the reason why I even bring all that up is because AI can be used to fabricate things. So again, AI is not inherently good or inherently bad. It's just there to be a tool. Can it be a tool for Satan? Can it be a tool for God? It's all in how you use it and the choices that you make. What brought this up is a couple weeks ago I was watching a YouTube short, and there was a picture of a priest pouring a jar of water on a girl who was very distraught. But he was pouring the water on there, and he was smiling, and she was just very guilty looking, very shamed. There was lots of that on there. And a couple other weeks ago, there was a YouTube short of a bobcat that got tied up in barbed wire, and there was a guy that stopped and pulled the barbed wire off the bobcat, fed it steak, got in his car and left. But if you look at the way he's waving, he's got like 8 fingers, which it's weird. It's uncanny valley. It's like, ah. And people in the comments were saying, wow, that's such a good guy. I'm glad that people are still good in the world. Yes, people are still good in the world, and praise God, but that was not real. First of all, a bobcat is not going to have that much barbed wire wrapped around it, and it's not even making a noise that it's wounded, but the facial things don't line up with the noise it's making, and the little cat is standing right beside of it. And I think at one point, the little cat looks like he's trying to go over to the old man and say, "Help my mom." And this pulls at our heartstrings at first glance. But when you actually look at it more, you start to see that it is fake. It's not real. So these people who are making these comments of, oh, I'm glad people like that still exist in the world, blah, 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 so on and so forth, it's a fabrication. It's not real. And part of the reason why I wanted to cover that this week is because that we're starting to see a shift from the real to the artificial. And it's been happening since I've been a child and I've grown up. It kind of started because I'm the generation that was able to see Windows 95. I was the generation who saw the internet kind of take over everyday life. And we are disciples of the internet. And John Eldridge has a great commentary on that, so I'm not going to say a lot on that. It's just when you are at your house and you're like, oh no, this thing broke, what's the first thing you do? You go to the internet without even thinking about it. How do I fix the thing that broke? And I'm not saying that that's not a good tool, it is. But the problem is, that's the speed at which we want answers. That's the speed at which our minds move. That's the speed while we always have anxiety, because we're constantly connected. We're constantly looking for answers. And unfortunately, because we have the entire corpus of human knowledge, there is a lot of skepticism that comes with that too. People who are online and they're having all these commentaries, I mean, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe. Or it could be in your head, or maybe it's this psychophenomena that I looked up on WebMD. That's unfortunate, because some things really are testimonies, and we are overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. But how much would Jesus' ministry been effective in today's age? Because there's so many voices, there's so many other things, there's so many distractions. Personally, in my opinion, it wouldn't be near as effective as it was back then, because there's just so many other distractions. Why can't I hear from God? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? How busy are you? How busy is your mind? How many things inhabit your mind instead of the goodness of God? A lot of people in the Eastern Orthodox teach about, how the way when we quiet our minds is when we hear from God. It's in the quiet moments that we get the answer to the thing that we're praying, or we get direction. It's not when we're driving in traffic and rush hour or wherever else. I mean, I go out into the woods to try to get solitude, get my mind clear, and be able to get back on point. We inherently as people need that. We need time to be able to restore our union with God. So with all that said, going back to the priest smiling, pouring the jar on the lady, I mean, in one sense, when I first look at it, it's like, amen. But then when you actually look at it and let it you feel the spiritual fruit of that way that guy's smiling, it's like, haha, I'm going to drown you, And the next thing that comes up is, why does she still feel that way after the cleansing? Because after he pours the jar, she still has that expression on her face. Why does she still have that expression? Because if she truly was delivered, then she wouldn't have that expression. Again, I realize it's AI, but if you think about it like that, it makes a difference. Now, could you generate something that had somebody being baptized, coming up, raising their hands up, praising God? Absolutely. But just having generic images of things, I mean, it's deception. I mean, a couple weeks ago as well, a person that I follow, not in a religious sense, just I'm interested in boats. Mike Brady's Ocean Liner Designs, great YouTube channel. But he took all of this AI footage from the Titanic and he criticized it. It's because a lot of people are doing a day in the life. You wake up and it's your first day on the Titanic, and here's what you're going to do, and here's what you're going to eat, and all this stuff. And in one sense, that's pretty cool that we can do that now. But when you actually look at some of the things that he was criticizing and actually zoom in on it, like with your focus, you're like, yeah, that's true. Because like you look at it and there are two forks on the guy's plate and they're to get connected together, and then this guy's got like 8 fingers, and you're like, this is weird and creepy. Or you'll zoom into one side when they're around and they're in the dining hall and a lady doesn't really have a very good human face, and you're like, that's not good. Or they'll try to make the images of people better, and they look nothing like the actual person who lived back in 1912. So it's a deception. So in the same way, when this particular individual is getting baptized, even though they're not a real person, it's not showing you the actual way to get baptized. So it's a deception. Even though it's simple things, and people can say, "Oh, well, you're not letting the Spirit of God flow. You're not doing this. You're not doing that." You can make that argument, but for people who aren't in our faith, for people who are kind of seeing it in the future, they're going to think that to get baptized, you have to take a jar of water and put it on somebody's head when they're crying. So I have a problem with that. Now, is the Spirit in there? That's something you have to discern for yourself. but you can manipulate these images any way you want to make them show your spiritual viewpoint. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that people will see things on the surface. Now, when you're deep into your faith, and this goes for any background, not just Christian, when you're deep in your faith, you can point things out and say, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Hollywood's really bad for that too, is they'll only focus on the negative things. They'll only focus on the preachers that are using the debar words, or the ones that are hypocritical. They're not focusing on the good that Christians will do. I can't really speak for Islam, but I would think that it would kind of be similar there as well. It's just showing you what the computer believes. So in other words, what everybody else in the world believes your faith is. So, like in my case, just as a little aside, I have generated AI music. And I'm sitting here talking about, I guess, the purported evils of AI, and I'm using it myself. It's not AI itself that's evil. It's how you're using it. How are you using it to glorify God or to give more credit to Satan? So I have been silent about it for a long time, but over Christmas, I had been praying for a long time about, Lord, make me fruitful. Lord, make me fruitful. I didn't realize what form that would take, but there was a lot of warfare that came after that spiritually. There would be a time where I would dream in images, and God would say in my spirit, write this down, write this down. And you're like, okay, cool, this is like the book of Revelation or something, all right. And it came out as song lyrics, and I've always wanted to do that, be able to write a song or whatever, and sometimes my poetry in the past would lean towards that, but it actually was coming like a song, and everything would fit and kind of line up. And I do believe that those were the words that God wanted me to write down. So when I go back and listen to them, it's like, wow, this is a good song. And then part of you and your flesh man goes, oh yeah, this is a great song that you wrote. And then you smile and you say, no, I didn't write this. God wrote this. He used me, but he wrote this. And people sometimes will roll their eyes and say, yeah, that's what they all say. But no, really, it's, wow, this is amazing. How does that fit together? If you were to sit and kind of analyze it poetry-wise, you're like, wow, those rhyme, those don't rhyme. It fits together. And it makes like a little miniature movie or something, or an image, and that's all God. So that part was amazing. In terms of the songs themselves, I am going to share them. I'm just not quite to a point where I can do that yet. We are getting very busy at the park, so I don't really have a lot of extra time to devote to things at the moment. But we'll make an announcement and show you where you can go listen to those if you're interested, and if not, that's okay. Using the AI for songs was a very interesting exercise over the Christmas break. So as I would write things down, then I would put them into the AI app and then tell it exactly what kind of music I wanted it to be, and it would turn it out within 2-3 minutes. And in some ways it kind of felt like cheating, but it also felt like it gave a voice to something I've been trying to do for a long time, because I'm always trying to find music that makes me feel good, like a lot of people, but also that glorifies God. And it's like, wow, if I can't find it, I can make it with this computer app, or phone app in this case, and this will be a way that other people might be able to enjoy it as well. That part of AI is very soul satisfying, because for once you have a voice and you're like, this is the way I feel about God today. I'm really happy about His grace and His mercy, and you can put it in a song. And you don't even have to be a musician. If you have a musician's ear, though, it is helpful, because unfortunately with AI, everything that's generative is basically everything out there people like, this is what it is. So it makes it very generic. I would say that would be for music. I would say that would be for the way that they view things. So I assume that a lot of the generative AI for, like I said, that baptism scene, they think that we're putting a jar of water on somebody's head as they're crying. You know, I'm not really sure why, but I mean, you could make the argument that that's what the computer believes that everybody believes about Christianity, which in one sense makes you roll your eyes, but in another sense it also should concern us a little bit, because what people who are very well-meaning Christians and very well-meaning followers of Christ, when they put AI in their videos and if they're not having a spirit of discernment about it, what are they portraying? So it used to be, well, we have to show the world who we are. And I don't mean that in a look at me, legalistic, prideful way. It's just to be separate from the world is not to be a part of the world. So for some people, that means they dress a certain way because of their tradition, or for other people, it means this. But the law that's written on our hearts by God should be what people see in our every day-to-day affair. Now, I don't mean that the law, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do this. When you actually follow God and you want to be in union with Him, you're going to do things that you wouldn't do if you weren't. So, for instance, if you're married, you're not going to go inherently cheat on your spouse. You're not going to disrespect them, so on and so forth. So if you wanted to be married, you're going to follow a certain guideline and a certain rule for marriage. It's the same thing when you follow God. Don't have any other gods before me. So back in those days, it was don't worship the thing that's clay that's in the temple. Now it's, how about let's not worship money, or how about let's not worship our car or our phone or whatever. So it's changed. So the focus was on the clay thing in the temple, or the wooden thing or the stone thing in the temple, and now it's changed to the objects that we have made with our own hands. But God gave us the intelligence to be able to make it. And a lot of people forget that. So they worship the creation, not the creator. So AI, as I said, it's not good or bad. It's just what it is. But how about we take it and use it for the glory of God? But let's be cautious about it. So instead of having a image of an old priest smiling and pouring water on somebody's head, so in the AI generative block, let's not just put baptism. Let's put exactly what baptism means. Let's put priest or whatever, holding person holding their nose, going underwater, coming back up, so on and so forth. Because I've found that the more specific you are, the more closely the images or whatever you're doing will be what you want. And pray about it too. So I'm not saying not to use AI, just be cautious, because it is an example of our faith, and we need to represent our faith well. We need to represent our country well. We need to represent ourselves well, and be careful what we put out there. There's a long time ago when I was in school, we talked about digital dirt. So not everybody needs to know your dirty laundry on Facebook. I would say the same thing about AI. Some people have used it and abused it. They'll feel unconfident about themselves, and then they'll have a generative text message thread with a virtual girlfriend, we'll put in air quotes, and it's not a real person, it's a computer, but they are very mean to this thing. So even though it doesn't have any type of life in it, because we are modeling what we see, it's going to reflect at us what we give it. So it's sort of what you feed it is what it'll become. Same thing with that. Am I saying that when the rise of the machines happens, the angry text that somebody put on their virtual girlfriend is going to cause a robot to hurt them or to shoot them? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that what we feed it is what it becomes. So people are talking about how the algorithm of this thing and the algorithm of that thing is just showing me this stuff. It's yes, because what you feed it is what it becomes. A music generator AI app, a photo generator AI app, or a video AI app. You're going to get those things. So why not use them for the glory of God and not for the pride of Satan? And if you're concerned about if you're using those things for that reason, pray about it. Or go talk to somebody who you trust, who's a mentor, and say, this is what I'd like to do. How do you think I should do it? And maybe if they have experience with AI, they can say, well, try this instead of this. Because the more specific you are, the better off it does. And honestly, the way it seems to me is, the way it is now is kind of like a little child. So what you tell it is what it'll give you. So if you tell a little child to sit on the table, they're going to sit on a table. They're not going to sit on the part of the table that we normally sit on. They're just going to sit on the table because you told them to sit on the table. Now, if you say sit on your bottom on the table, they'll say, oh, well, my bottom goes on the chair here, so I will sit on my bottom on the table. Same thing with AI. So it's interesting how it's kind of in its infancy or in its childhood phase, and we're putting all these things in. So we think about our own children and our own childhood, and how our childhood had this happen that was bad, this happened that was bad, okay, that's great. You're focusing on the negative. So you're putting that into the AI. So when the AI gets to the point, if it ever gets to the point where it kind of grows up more, metaphorically here, it's going to have to go through its childhood trauma too, that people put into its servers or whatever. So that's just something to note. Are you using it for the glory of God? Or are you using it for the pride of Satan? And it's deceptive. The more time we spend on artificial things, the more we start to believe in those things, and it becomes our own echo chambers. I'm not saying don't use them, but temper it with talking with real people, petting your dog or your cat, going out, being in nature, praying, being with God. Because the more time of that you have, and the more closely you are with God, the more closer to the vine you'll be, and then those things will produce good fruit. So just be cautious with them. And just remember that these deceptive things now will become the things that are commonplace in the future. So we look towards the longevity of things. So what's AI today is probably going to be maybe a holographic projection tomorrow. And I don't mean right tomorrow. These things that we're focused on now, video games, whatever, we'll actually be able to be in the video game maybe, in 100, 200 years. I'm not really sure. But how much harder will it be to listen to the voice of God when we have all of these other artificial distractions around us? So do what you can, play with it, enjoy it. But remember, are we using it for the glory of God or to learn things? Or are we using it for the pride of Satan? But also, for everybody who's creative out there and who are musicians, that process of collaborating with people is you lose that a little bit. And I very much understand how people would be very upset about that, or images and things like that. So risk the real when you can. Alan Arnold has a book on that. It's called Risk the Real. It's, again, by the Wild at Heart gang. So it's called Risk the Real, I believe. And it's all about deception. And it talks about how the first deception was in the Garden of Eden with Satan, and kind of how we've gotten to the point where we are now. So basically we become little g gods. And that's also another danger with AI too, because it gives us absolutely everything we want and nothing that we don't want. So we generate, like, let's say, a perfect girlfriend or a perfect boyfriend. But the problem is we don't have the other stuff to balance it out. So they have everything I want and nothing I don't want. I don't think that's necessarily healthy. And this is just text, or maybe, a little AI chatbot where it actually has a virtual assistant on it or something. But it doesn't balance it out. So if I have an idea and I bounce it off of my wife and she says, no, that's not really good because of this, this, and this, and you're missing God here, you're like, oh, absolutely, you're right. Whereas if it's a virtual assistant, oh, yeah, absolutely, that's great, that's great, that's great. So that's not necessarily a good thing either, because it strokes the ego. And sometimes desire can go mad that way. And you don't have that balance of talking to a real person. So risk the real. So also with that deception too, another thing to bring up is it can be its own form of witchcraft if it gets us away from God. So it's deceptive. So if I take a picture on, let's say, Snapchat, and I use that to make my face different, that's all fine and great. But if I'm presenting only that version of myself to the world, that could potentially be its own form of witchcraft, because I'm trying to manipulate what God has already provided and given me, and I'm not content with what He's given me. So you could say the same thing about any type of AI. I'm not saying that it's inherently bad, it's how you use it. But if it's a manipulation of any type that's deceptive, then it can be its own form of witchcraft. But it will be interesting in the next 10 years where we go from here. And because of the way that TikTok typically is, and there's so many dividing lines and the digital tribe, if you will be interesting to see where Christian AI content goes, secular AI content goes, and kind of where it has commonalities and where it kind of conflicts. Will we get to the point where we'll battle a secular AI digital robot and then the Christian robot will fight it? I don't know. Will it become kind of the battle of the century? Again, I don't know. But it'll just be interesting to see where it goes. So just remain watchful, remain prayerful, and remain discerning. And again, it's not what you do, it's how you use it. Use it for the glory of God and for education or for the pride of Satan. Anyway, a little bit shorter one this week. Something to think about. Hope that's helpful. I'm sure there's a lot of other commentaries out there about it, probably more in depth. It's just what's been on my spirit for the last couple weeks. We'll see where God leads for the next time, and we'll see you later.